Hi everyone, glad to see you back on the channel. Today we're diving into a major foreign policy statement that's been making waves in Washington and across the Middle East. Former President Donald Trump has issued a sharp warning that the United States could end its support for Iraq if former Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki were to return to power. This statement has sparked intense debate about U.S. influence in Iraq, the future of American involvement in the region, and the broader balance of power in the Middle East. To understand why this warning matters, we first need to look at the relationship between the United States and Iraq. Since the 2003 invasion, the U.S. has invested enormous political, military, and financial resources into Iraq. This includes years of military presence, training Iraqi security forces, supporting counter-terrorism operations against extremist groups like ISIS, and providing diplomatic and economic assistance to stabilize the country. Over time, the relationship has evolved from direct military occupation to a more limited partnership. Today, the U.S. role in Iraq is focused on advising and assisting Iraqi forces, maintaining intelligence cooperation, and supporting the Iraqi government diplomatically. Even so, American involvement remains controversial both inside Iraq and within the United States. Nouri al-Maliki is a central figure in this controversy. He served as Iraq's prime minister from 2006 to 2014, a period marked by intense sectarian conflict, political instability, and growing Iranian influence. While Maliki initially had U.S. backing, his time in office became increasingly divisive, with critics accusing him of consolidating power, sidelining political rivals, and undermining democratic institutions. One of the most serious criticisms of Maliki centers on his handling of Iraq's security forces. Many analysts argue that his leadership weakened the military by prioritizing loyalty over competence. This, they say, contributed to the rapid collapse of Iraqi forces in 2014 when ISIS captured large parts of the country, including the city of Mosul. Trump's warning reflects long-standing concerns within U.S. political circles about Maliki's leadership style and his perceived closeness to Iran. Iran wields significant influence in Iraq through political allies, economic ties, and militia groups. For many in Washington, Maliki represents a political direction that could pull Iraq further into Iran's orbit, reducing U.S. leverage and influence. When Trump says the U.S. could end its support for Iraq if Maliki returns, he is signaling a conditional approach to foreign policy. The message is clear: American assistance is not guaranteed, and it depends on the political choices Iraq makes. This aligns with Trump's broader America First philosophy, which emphasizes limiting U.S. commitments abroad unless they clearly serve American interests. Supporters of Trump's stance argue that the U.S. should not continue investing resources in a country whose leadership may be hostile to American goals. They say that if Iraq chooses leaders who undermine democratic norms or align too closely with U.S. adversaries, Washington has every right to step back. Critics, however, warn that such a move could backfire. Ending U.S. support could create a power vacuum that Iran, Russia, or other regional players would be eager to fill. It could also weaken Iraq's security forces at a time when extremist groups, though diminished, still pose a threat. Another key issue is how this warning is perceived inside Iraq. Iraqi politics are complex, with power divided among multiple factions, ethnic groups, and religious communities. External pressure from the United States can sometimes fuel nationalist backlash, making it harder for pro-Western politicians to operate. Some Iraqi leaders may view Trump's statement as interference in their domestic affairs. Others may see it as a reminder of how dependent Iraq still is on foreign support. Either way, the warning adds another layer of tension to an already fragile political environment. It's also important to consider the timing of this statement. Iraq has faced ongoing challenges, including economic struggles, corruption, public protests, and the task of rebuilding after years of conflict. Political uncertainty makes the prospect of a former leader like Maliki returning to prominence more significant, as it raises questions about whether Iraq is moving forward or reverting to old patterns. From the U.S. perspective, Iraq remains strategically important. It sits at the crossroads of the Middle East, bordering Iran, Syria, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia. Stability in Iraq affects regional security, energy markets, and the fight against terrorism. Completely cutting off support could have far-reaching consequences beyond Iraq itself. Trump's warning also reflects a broader debate within the United States about the limits of American power. Many Americans are weary of long overseas engagements and question whether the costs outweigh the benefits. Statements like this tap into that sentiment by suggesting that U.S. involvement is a choice, not an obligation. At the same time, U.S. allies and partners are watching closely. How Washington handles its relationship with Iraq sends signals to other countries that rely on American support. If U.S. backing is seen as unpredictable or highly conditional, it could affect trust and cooperation elsewhere. There's also the question of whether such warnings actually influence political outcomes. While the U.S. has significant leverage, Iraqi politics are driven largely by internal dynamics. Sectarian identities, local alliances, and regional influences often play a bigger role than foreign pressure. Still, public statements from a figure like Trump carry weight. They shape narratives, influence media coverage, and can shift diplomatic conversations. Even if Maliki never returns to power, the warning itself reinforces U.S. opposition to leaders perceived as authoritarian or overly aligned with Iran. Looking ahead, much will depend on how Iraqi politics unfold and how future U.S. leaders choose to engage. Will Washington double down on conditional support, or will it prioritize stability above all else? Will Iraqi leaders seek to balance relations between the U.S. and Iran, or will they lean decisively in one direction? This situation also raises broader questions about sovereignty and influence. To what extent should external powers shape the political choices of other nations? And how can countries like Iraq assert independence while still relying on foreign assistance? Trump's warning is not just about one man or one country. It's about the future of U.S. engagement in the Middle East, the lessons learned from past interventions, and the ongoing struggle to balance ideals with strategic interests. As events continue to unfold, this issue will remain a key test of how the United States defines its role on the global stage. Whether the warning leads to meaningful change or fades into political rhetoric, it highlights the enduring complexity of U.S.-Iraq relations. For viewers trying to make sense of it all, the takeaway is this: statements like these are rarely just about the headline. They reflect deeper tensions, long histories, and competing visions of what international leadership should look like. We'll keep watching how this develops, because the decisions made here will shape not only Iraq's future, but also America's relationship with the region for years to come.